That didn't take long. Let's see what we got. Hopefully it's a perch. It's a nice perch. All right. All right, we're hooked into something. This is a good fish, man. So today, we're gonna be making a micro lure. This little tiny micro crankbait. So this is the little micro lure we're gonna build today. This one is actually my prototype. It worked really well. I think I'm gonna pretty much copy it. I'm gonna make some subtle changes. I wanna keep it about the same size, but I'm gonna reduce the volume of the body a little bit. I wanna make it more like the shape of my jelly bean crankbait. I made a video of making it and making a mold for it, and I'll post it above me so you can check it out if you like to. But what I wanna replicate is that sweep on top. It's a little more sweeping around, and I want to get a little bit of that belly cutout on the back. I just want to reduce the volume of the back of the lure just a tad. I think it'll move a little better. You can see how it's pretty much just straight across at the bottom and has a little bit of a flat stop on top, and I want to get rid of that. Otherwise, it has a really nice action, and I'll show you some underwater shots at the end of the video. So before we move on, I just want to say, if you're new to the channel, my name's Franco. I'm a professional engineer, a lure designer, a lure maker, and an avid fisherman. And I make these videos so I can share a little bit of my techniques and how I impose a little bit of engineering and physics on my lure designing. With that, let's work out what kind of material we're going to use to make this. So as a material for this, I wanted something that was going to be really light, really easy to shape. I was hoping to use balsa, but realistically, I don't want to have something that soft and tender for something this small. I wanted something really buoyant, low density, like balsa. So what I came up with is this stuff. And this is PVC. It's sold in, hardware stores and home improvement stores. They use it exteriorly. Is that a word? To trim houses. It's not structural, obviously, but it's very good for outdoor stuff because it doesn't really absorb water, and it doesn't get mildew, and it doesn't rot. But I really wanted a dowel because it's just a lot easier to go from a dowel to a little cylindrical shape like this. It's just a lot easier to shape, especially with something that small. It's so hard to hold on to and tough to sand. So I wanted to start off with a shape close to the shape of the lure. So I wanted a dowel, but you can't get dowels like this. So what I did is I cut my own dowel. So let's do that now. So what I'll be using is this plug cutter or bung cutter. It's a 1/2 inch diameter, and I'm just gonna put it on my little mini drill press. And then it's just a matter of plunging this down in there. All right, so here's the dowel. The beauty of this is that you shape pretty much by eye. I'm gonna take and taper down the end, kind of blocky on the front, and taper it back a little more sort of refined on the back. It's still gonna look a little bit kind of grub shaped. As usual, I'm gonna go back to the belt sander and sand this into a shape that starts to resemble this, and then I'll come back and just hand sand the rest down to a nice little mini crankbait look. And the hardest part of this is actually holding on to this thing. Okay, so that's pretty close. It's still really rough, but we'll get some refinements in there and get that little notch out on the belly. So to do the rest of the sanding, I'm going to use sanding blocks. I've got some sanding boards. And little things that I make myself, like a dowel with some sandpaper around it, comes in real handy for inside curves. And then for outside curves, I've got this block of wood that I've rounded out and then glued some sandpaper to. And that makes for a real easy way to shape these, because you can just sort of hold it more easily. Because the difficult part really is to get your mitts around this thing, at least for me anyway. So I got kind of the general shape. Doesn't look like much, I know, but before I get too far along, I want to go ahead and cut the lip slot. And to do that, I've got this big piece of dowel that I kind of hollowed out and is on a 45. I'm going to be able to use this to sort of just press it up against the surface so I can cut. All right, and that should do it. Hopefully that's a nice square cut. So I'm just going to continue to do my sanding and refining, and just to make sure that I've got things pretty much where I want before I drop it. Before I actually gouge in the belly, sort of concave part. I need to drill in the little holes for the hook hanger and the tie-on eye. And I'm going to use this little hand drill because this is just too small for a drill. I need these things in there so that I can hold on to the lure while I give it its first clear coat. Alright, now that I've got the tie-on eye and the hook eye little ports drilled, I need to actually make those. And I'm going to make those out of some leader wire. On the original one, I used 43-pound test. I'm going to use 108-pound test. It's got almost twice the diameter, but it's still only 0.022 inches, which is 0.53 millimeters. And I think it'll give me a little stiffer wire, because what I found is when I tuned it at the tie-on eye, after I caught a fish or two or three, it got out of tune pretty easily, so I had to play with it. So hopefully this will do the trick. And I'm going to use my typical technique to form these twist eyes. And I'll use a pin in a vise and these safety wire twisting pliers. So the other change I want to make is to have the actual hook, I don't have one here, attached directly to the hook wire. I don't want that extra split ring to extend the hook out. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to form a loop with these pliers so I get a little smaller loop, and I'll just put it on that little peg just like before, and we'll get this twisted in. Alright, now it's just a matter of trimming both of these so I can screw them into the body. I'm going to trim the hook hanger, but I'm not going to install it permanently. And let's see if the nose eye fits. Alright, that's in there perfect. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out and glue it, and then I can use that to hold it while I give it the initial clear coat. Alright, so the total weight of the original one is 3.15 grams. And I want to put a little less weight in this one because it's not as bulky. And so the hardware plus this little steel ball, and it'll be at 2.2 grams. But of course, it's going to have eyes and paint and the bib. So it probably will end up somewhere about maybe 2.7, maybe 2.7. That's my calculation, or my guess. We'll see at the end. All right, let's drill the hole for the steel ball. I'll just shove that in there. And I'll just put a little bit of UV resin just to fill the gap. Alright, and as usual, I'm just using UV resin. I just want to fill the pores. That's all I'm doing with this particular coat. Yuck. Alright, it's ready to go in the chamber. And I'll let it rotate for a little while, just so it levels off really good, and then I'll turn the lights on. Hey Ginger, what's the matter? It's raining? Alright, so while that's setting up, I want to go ahead and make the bib. And if you see on the original one, it's this tiny piece of plastic, and I made it from a piece of really thin plastic. Actually, this is 1/32 or 0.84 millimeters. And it's just a scrap piece of plastic that came from some packaging at some point. I save this kind of stuff because sometimes I'll mix resin on it and do other things with it. But it turns out that that's the exact right thickness for a bib for this little micro crankbait. But I want to do something slightly different for this one. Let's go out to the shop. Okay, so the way I punched out that little bib is with a circle punch, and this goes on my drill, and it's really meant for leather and that kind of thing, but it works really good on plastic too. And instead of using that clear plastic, I'm going to use this. This is just a lid off of a cheap food container, and I figure if I'm going to paint the lure right there at the chin red, why not have the bib be red? And that should give it an interesting look, right? Alright, there's our bib. The first coat of clear is cured, and we're ready to pull it out. And I'm going to sand it down just a little bit with this 280 grit, just to knock the sheen off so the paint will stick well. And now I need to dry fit this little bib. And as you can see, that circular shape doesn't really fit in there, right? So I have to trim off a little piece to create a flat spot. And then it slides in perfect. Now it's time to install the hook hanger, and I'll put a drop of crazy glue on the little bit that's extending out, and then I'll screw it the rest of the way in. Okay, time to paint. I'm starting off with this Createx Wicked Aluminum, and I'm going to use this for the whole body. The idea is that it'll shine through all the transparent colors I put on top of it. And I'm going to start with this Ghost Orange. This turns it gold. And now I'm going to go ahead and prepare to put some scale patterns on it. This is the smallest pattern I have in this fabric. For the scales, I'm going to use this moss green. It's also a Createx Wicked color. And I'm just going to give it a light dusting of this paint. And I'll top the lure with the same color. And then I'll set it off to dry. I like to use this polyacrylic as a mid coat to seal the paint before I put the actual clear coat on it. And after that dries, I can put the eyes on. I'm choosing this sort of small to mid-size greenish eye. It's a 3D eye, so it sticks out a little bit, but I think it looks pretty cool. Okay, let's put the bib on. And this is really simple. I'm just going to place it in there, make sure it's straight and square, and then put a couple of drops of UV resin as glue. Now I'll hit it with the UV light, and I'll fill the rest of that gap in a bit. Alright, pretty happy with that. I really like the gold green kind of hues. I tend to have more luck with that color. All right, now I'm just going to put a clear coat on it, and then I'm going to let it go for about an hour in the chamber. And then next time you see it, we'll be out on the lake trying to get some underwater shots with this little guy. All right, let's see what the final weight is. I don't even remember what I guessed. I think like 2.7 or something like that. I can't remember. I'll have to look at the video. 2.79. That's pretty close. All right, here we are at the big lake. We're in deep water here, so not much of a chance of catching anything on this little guy. But let's take a look at what it looks like in the water, see what kind of action you can see from the surface, and then I'll do an underwater shot. Let's take a look. Pretty nice action. Not much of a depth of dive. Let's see how straight it comes back. Looks pretty good. It's got plenty of wobble, man. Look at that thing go. Out at my lake because Lake Santa Fe was just getting crazy with boat traffic. So hopefully we can catch a perch out here. That's what I made these little lures for, to catch these speckled perch that are hunting for minnow out here in the middle of the lake. All right, there's one. Stay on, buddy. Oh, this feels like either a good perch or a bass. Big bluegill. All right, that's a good sized bluegill. See you, buddy. Well, typically the perch really don't start biting for a couple of hours, but we've got a couple of big storms rolling through and I don't want to get caught in it. So I'll see you all next Friday for the next build.